Good evening to all of you. Thank you all for being here this Saturday evening to deliberate on this very important issue of eradication of the social malady of child abuse from our society. At this moment, my mind goes back some 30 odd years to 1989. At that time, I had just recently joined as an assistant commissioner in Savanur subdivision in the old Akhanda Dharwar district of Karnataka. At the time, it was the largest subdivision in Karnataka. I was young and it was my first posting. My husband and I were also beginning our life together as a newly married couple. One night, around midnight, we were woken up by loud banging on the door. We were surprised as our government quarters was located at the fringes of Savanur town, surrounded by government offices, a large playground, and a government school. So we had no neighbors as such. When I opened the door, I found a group of about 25 boys on my doorstep. Some of them were nervous, they were hanging behind. Others were angry and indignant, pushing forward. There was a small room at the entry foyer which doubled up as my home office. I called them inside and asked them what the matter was. Why have you all come here at this time? Are you in any kind of trouble? Do you need any help? After they had gotten over the first shock of being called inside and my rather gentle inquiry, the words came tumbling out as several started talking together at once. The issue was simply this: they were hungry. These were students, residents in the local social welfare hostel. The warden of the hostel was not feeding them properly. That day, they had not eaten anything except ganji, rice gruel, that morning, and it was past midnight already. Some of them had gathered their courage to approach me, but there were over 50 children in the hostel, including young ones. We saw you when you were inspecting the new building, they said, referring to my visit the previous evening to the new AC office building under construction. So we thought we will come to you and ask for your help. So, what to do? I did not immediately have cooked food available, but as newlyweds, we had a lot of snacks and sweets available at home. My husband immediately distributed these to the children at the home. Meanwhile, I called my Shahrizdar and Tahsildar, who were my deputies. We located the nearest hotel, woke the proprietor up, who in turn woke up the cook, and the meal was prepared, transported to the hostel, and the children fed, all in less than 1 hour. By that time, the hostel staff, the warden, a number of local officials, even a few curious onlookers had all gathered around my home, and they followed us to the hostel too. This was unheard of. The new AC feeding the hostel kids. The social welfare hostel had never seen, and likely never did see later, as many visitors as it did on that dawn. Anyway, it put me firmly on the map of Savanur, charted the course which brought me to Youth Empowerment Department later, and opened my eyes to the realities which an outsider often fails to perceive. This is just one instance of how the child and childhood itself is abused in our country. Abuse is everywhere, within the home, in school, in public spaces, from parents, families, neighbors, and strangers. This is why, when we address the prevention and eradication of child abuse, we have to look at two aspects: the regulatory and the societal. On the regulatory side, India has a plethora of progressive child related legislation. Their constitutional underpinnings are to be found in Part 3, Fundamental Rights, and Part 4, Directive Principles of State Policy, which guarantee rights to the children of India under the following articles. Article 14, that mandates that citizens of India, including children, must be treated equally before law and must be given equal protection. Article 15, which, while prohibiting discrimination, makes special provision for women and children. Article 21, under which every Indian has the right to adequate food, shelter, and clothing. Article 21A, that mandates free education. Article 23, which prohibits trafficking, and Article 24, which prohibits employment of children under the age of 14 years. While the normal constitutional remedies are available for violation of constitutional principles, there are specific legislations to protect child rights and prevent child abuse. These include the Indian Penal Code 1860 under sections 83, 292, 293 and 305. The Guardians and Wards Act 1890, the Child Marriage Restraint Act 1929 amended in 79, the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956 amended in 1986, the Women and Children's Licensing Act 1956, Probation of Offenders Act 1958, National Policy of Children 1974, Bonded Labor Abolition Act 1976, Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986, National Policy on Education 1986, National Policy on Child Labor 1987, Juvenile Justice Care and Protection Act 2000, the Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Regulation and Prevention of Misuse Amendment Act 2000, the National Health Policy 2002, and the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012. Taken in totality, these laws encompass the freedom of the child and her civil rights, family environment, health care, welfare, education, leisure and cultural activities, and special protection methods. The child's rights to survival, to minimum standards of food, shelter, and clothing, to live with dignity, to be protected from all sorts of violence, to be protected from neglect, to be protected from physical and sexual abuse, to be protected from dangerous drugs, to freedom of opinion, and to freedom of expression are all guaranteed by these laws. India is also a signatory to the United Nations Conventions on Rights of the Child since 1992. The basic principles of the CRC are non-discrimination, best interest of the child, right to life, survival and development, and the right to be heard. Encompassing survival rights, developmental rights, protection rights, and participation rights, the CRC also introduces 3 optional protocols on the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography, the involvement of children in armed forces, and the communications procedure. India has also framed the National Charter for Children in 2003, underlining the inherent rights of every child, and the National Policy for Children 2013, reiterating its commitment to safeguard, inform, include, support and empower all children within its territory and jurisdiction. The Ministry of Women and Child Development, extending its commitment of the 11th plan to create a protective environment for 40% of India's vulnerable children, implements the Integrated Child Protection Scheme, underlining prevention, promotion of family-based care, financing, integrated service provision, a feasible care plan for each child, and standards for care and protection. To implement the scheme, a four-tier service delivery structure comprising the Central Child Protection Society, State Child Protection Society, District and Sub-District Child Protection Units. In alliance with NGOs and civil society organizations, the ICPS provides oversight and standardization for pre-existing and evolving child protection schemes in India. From this narration, it is clear that there is no lack of commitment or dearth of legislation and institutional structures to protect and nurture the child. Yet, atrocities continue. Recently, we heard of a case where a child suspected of theft was lynched by a shopkeeper and his family. Every other day, the media reports one more incident of the abuse, including sexual abuse of young maids, students, child labor by employers, teachers, relatives, in homes, schools, child care centers, and public spaces. When protectors become predators, society is helpless or indifferent. The assault on minors isn't new for India. Over 1 lakh cases of child abuse were enrolled under the POSCO, which started from 1980 to 2019 as per information gathered from high courts. The answer to the question, would we be able to keep ourselves from assaulting children and saving our children from getting assaulted by others, is sadly a no, backed by empirical and anecdotal evidence. There is a conspiracy of silence about child abuse, as about so many forms of criminality and inhumanity in India. So, when you see or learn about a case of child abuse, don't stay silent. Contact the police on their hotline number for immediate assistance. Alternatively, Childline 1098 can be used to report any child abuse. Take photographs or video clips or voice recordings of the child abuse as evidence. Share the evidence with the police station having jurisdiction over the matters where the offense was committed. The police shall register a zero FIR and upon lodging of the FIR, start the investigation. If it so happens that the police station refuses to lodge an FIR or to record any information, a copy of such information shall be sent to the Superintendent of Police or the Assistant Commissioner of Police, along with a statement that the police station refused to lodge a FIR or record the information in question. After official reporting of abuse and lodging of FIR, the matter goes to the competent court. Be prepared to stand witness. This is what is required from you. This is what is required from society. Take the battle to the field. Thank you all very much. Jai Hind.